Staying connected matters. That's why AT&T has connectivity you can depend on, or they'll proactively make it right. That's the AT&T Guarantee. Terms and conditions apply. Visit att.com/guarantee for details. AT&T. Connecting changes everything. JoAnna Hardy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm very excited to see you again. Just
Likewise.
to even be in the space with you is really nice. I never have.
We've never done this show together in the same space?
Yeah.
I have a visual in my head of doing something together.
On Zoom.
Was it on Zoom?
Yeah. We did that, the COVID one, COVID Deniers, and that was on Zoom, obviously, because it was in the middle of COVID. The other was an election insanity or sanity or something. Oh, no, there was one time. Sharon Salzberg in New York.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's been a while, though.
Well, yeah, it's nice to be in person. We're in LA together. All right, let me start with a very basic question for you.
Okay.
What is Sila? S-I-L-A. What does that word mean?
Yeah, simply translated to ethics, or the way we show up, behave through our speech and action in the world. It's a Buddhist concept. The word Sila is a Pali, which was the original language of the Buddha. I know you know this, but for anyone listening, that word Sila means, translates to ethics. And it's, we can...
No, please.
I can unpack.
Please do. Yeah, sorry.
So ethics lives in a particular place in the Eightfold Path, which is really kind of our guideposts and what is laid out as our practice. The whole of the practice is in the Eightfold Path in Buddhism. And it has three aspects. There's the Sila, which is this ethical part that we're going to unpack a bit. Samadhi, which is our actual meditation practice, and Panya, which is our wisdom practice. And many people come through different aspects of the practice. Some people read a book, so the wisdom piece, reading a book and understanding what we know to be like these truths of existence would be what lives in wisdom, the wisdom aspect. Something like people might have heard of the Four Noble Truths, but there's also dukkha, anicca, anatta is in there, which is really just understanding the truth of the way things are. So that's in this wisdom piece. Or wise intention is in this wisdom piece. And then the Sila is how we live, again, through our actions, through our speech, through our livelihood, which I think you and I have really fortunately found a way to do that. It might have taken a while, but we got here. Right. And then the Samadhi, which is our actual meditation practice. So mindfulness is one of them, our effort towards mindfulness, and then our concentration. So those are all 8. And really, truly, none of the 8, it's not a linear path. None of the 8 live without each other. They all really kind of work with and for each other. And as we talk about Sila, I'll explain how Sila is really supported by our mindfulness practice, our Samadhi, and our wisdom. But like I said, for me, the doorway I came in through was through Sila. I was suffering a lot, and most of my suffering was through the drastic amounts of pain I was causing myself and other people. In my life from a pretty young age. There was just one point when I knew there had to be a better way, and I knew that all the harm I was causing myself wasn't it. So I did a lot of other practices before I got here, but this one made the most clear sense to me, how it was laid out and how I then learned it. And so within Sila, like I said, there's how we speak and act, our actions and speech. And within that lives the precepts, which a lot of us have heard about. I don't know how much you want me to say right now before you ask me a question. I'll just be like,
No, I love
a lot.
You're very passionate about
this. It's a fire hose.
Yes.
I am, totally.
So let me just reset the table just to make sure that everybody's got it. So one of the foundational lists in Buddhism, the Buddha liked to make lists.
Yeah.
His first list was the Four Noble Truths. The fourth entry on the Four Noble Truths is a list within a list, a nested list, and it's called the Eightfold Path. And it's basically a recipe, a cookbook for getting enlightened. And it has, as you might imagine, these 8 folds, these 8 entries. And as you said, the 8 entries on the Eightfold Path, the 8 aspects of the path are divided up into 3 buckets.
Correct.
One of the buckets is meditation or samadhi. The other is wisdom, which is one of the fruits of meditation, and the Pali word for that is panya. And then the third, which we're going to talk about today, is sila, which is ethics, which sounds a little bit like somebody thundering at you from a pulpit on Sunday morning, telling you how to run your life.
Yeah.
And yes, there are some broad, as we'll discuss, there are some broad guidelines about like not killing and not stealing. But as you will explain, like actually ethics in this context is much more self-interested. It's like, here's some guardrails that will help you be happier, and that will actually be supported by your meditation practice and also support the meditation practice.
Correct.
It's quite interesting. And one last thing that you said that I just want to make sure I restate for people is that within Sila, there are these 5 precepts, these 5 agreements that we make as Buddhists, which you don't even have to call yourself a Buddhist to adopt these. It's not like commandments. They're not etched in stone in the same way. They're also a lot less specific.
Yeah.
There's nothing about like coveting your neighbor's wife or anything like that. It's a little bit more broad, and there's a lot more room to play and interpret for yourself. So did I sum up what you were talking about well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And to really pinpoint what you were saying, my biggest turn on about Buddhism in general and the precepts specifically is this, it wasn't a dictate. It wasn't a command. There's not a lot of judgment or criticism in it. And because I grew up Catholic, and then I moved to another tradition that was very much like, you better, you must. And what this told me was my own level of maturity, my own level of self-reflection, my own inner conscience, was what I got to look towards. And it was, I studied psychology for a while, and it was like this good enough parent idea. I felt like the Buddha was a good enough parent, right? Because there was a lot of permission, like you said. But the permission was also to check it out, like see the ick factor for yourself, like see what actually hurts, see what doesn't feel good, see what if it isn't conditioned out of us, or, if we haven't in some way numbed out. We really have the opportunity to check it out for ourselves. And that was my biggest turn on, because I was always a rebellious person, and part of why I got in trouble. But I found the harder the rules and dictates, the less I understood or were interested in even trying to understand. But I sure knew what it felt like to lay in bed in the morning and just be like, what did I do yesterday? This doesn't feel good. I don't want to live like this. So that was my, like I said, my biggest turn on about this practice. Again, whether it's being Buddhist or not, it didn't matter, but there was so much clarity, so much permission, and no one was looking over my shoulder. And I didn't need to look over anyone's shoulder, right? So that's another part about the precepts that I liked, was it, because I can be, ask anybody that knows me well, I can be like, wait a minute, do this way, right? There's a right way, and I don't mean right and wrong, like good and bad or good and evil. I just mean like, you didn't clean the house right, like that kind of right, So I'm real good at that. But what I really like about this is it also gave me permission to not have to call anyone else out for their, sila, or for how they're showing up in the world, because we're using the term fuck around and find out right now. So in many ways, that's what it is. It's like fuck around and find out. And, and we get to do that. And we get to see the constant mirroring in our relationships. And when we talk about here, Tibet, if we're going to go into that, I'll unpack that a little bit more. But yeah, the precepts really, truly in Sila are, we look at them as aspirational tools, as guidelines, as a possibility. And those possibilities can even be, a lot, why I still like talking about this, and why it's still interesting to me is as I watch my interest unfold into sort of societal or cultural sila, right? Like if we were to give America an archetype, or if we were to give a certain community or a religion or a race an archetype, not that anything is monolithic in that way, but, if we think about what has been indoctrinated into us, right? So a certain precept, like even the first precept of not to kill, that means not taking the life of another sentient living being. So that can be broken down a lot, and this can be debated a lot, especially in terms of like veganism or how we might eat. And, for me personally, I prescribe to be a vegan. Veganism is where my heart lives. It's not where my body lives.
Huh.
And every time I have this interesting story where I'd been a vegan for about, 2.5, 3 years. And I was following a Hindu tradition at the time. And it was one of the things that culturally was specified. And plus it felt right. So in my heart, it felt right. Like that's what I wanted to be doing. And I was a single mom of 2 young kids at the time. And I felt like shit. Most of the time, I was exhausted. I was tired. I had anemia, And I went to this nutritionist, and she was a psychic nutritionist. And she had been a Nazi youth. So she grew up during the Third Reich, and she was a captive. So her parents were German Nazis. So she was a captive in the concentration camps. And what ended up happening with a lot of those kids is they were as malnourished. They were abandoned also, right, by their parents. And they were just put in these camps and pretty left on their own. Anyway, when the war was over, she was an orphan at that point and was discovered by this man who was a nutritionist. And his plight was to bring these children back to health. And they all had scurvy. They were malnourished. So anyway, she has a very interesting story, but she then had this ability. She became a nutritionist as a woman. So when I met her, she was probably 85, and she showed me the tattoos, her concentration camp tattoos on her arms. And I said, I really don't want to eat meat. She said, but you have to. And she said, treat it as medicine. Every time you eat it, honor it. Thank the animal. And then she looked at me and she said, Hitler was a vegetarian. And I said, wow, no, I didn't know that. And she said, so it's not always, Right. She was like, well, so it's not always the only ethical way to go. So I took that in, and I've tried again. This was probably 20 years ago. I've tried multiple times to be vegan again, and each time I suffer. So that's what interests me, like around these sila pieces, around these precepts, right, is how a certain culture might see something as ethically really wrong. It might be a law even, when I think of the laws of slavery or the Jim Crow laws or these kind of things that were laws. And so there's a right and wrong to it in society. Yet these precepts are really less about that, right? So it's like for these humans that might live within societal laws, but always kind of know it doesn't feel quite right. Those kids that decide they're going to leave the religion or leave the way that the family grew up because it doesn't quite fit them. So why, again, I like these precepts is for us and only us to kind of grapple with and ponder and practice and settle. And so when I give them as a practice to students, or I've led many, 5-week-long courses, and I'll have them do 1 precept a week and just really live in it and see how it feels, and then see how their body responds, how their heart responds, how their mind responds, and take it in that way. Yeah.
It's really consonant with one of the Buddha's slogans, which was, come see for yourself. You rephrased it in 2 ways. One is check it out, and the other is fuck around and find out. And I love that. The spirit of it is really different from a commandment. It's like, hey, do you want to be happy? I recommend don't lie a lot.
Right.
Or don't lie at all. And when you do lie,
what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. How does it feel? How does it feel for the other person? How does it feel for you? Do you have to keep lying to keep up the first lie? Yeah. Why do you have to lie? Like, what's the purpose, And then we get to keep digging deeper. Like, a lot of people will merely lie. Sometimes it's because it's funnier, right? Like, Sometimes we lie because it just makes a better story. Sometimes we lie because we want to be liked. Sometimes we lie because we think we're saving somebody else's feelings. Sometimes, there's a lot of reasons why people lie. And so I actually have a friend who said she was just completely not, and this is a person who does not lie, but she took all that. She was worried about lying on a form for her immigration papers, right? So she was like, I don't even want to have to stretch the truth in any way in that way, because for her, it was just not feeling good. Also, again, how not to judge anybody else or yourself if something comes up. A parent wants their kid to be in a certain school district, so they use their cousin's address to get in that school district because it's a better school district for their kids. Like, okay, not telling the truth. And is it something that we need to suffer about? I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But it's for, kind of for us to fuck around and find out, right?
Right.
Yeah. How does it land? And then also another piece of that is like how much dissociating or dissonance is involved. Like in some ways, how much do we lie to ourselves so that something can be okay? And, oftentimes people don't know. It takes a big unraveling. And that's where this whole of the path is. Like you and I know that I liked the idea of Sila. That was my entry. But it really took me sitting and meditating and kind of unraveling the mind, and its habits and its conditioning from birth to really start to understand even when I was lying to myself. That, again, is why I like that word path. It's because it has a distance to it. It has longevity to it. It's not fast food. It's not a drive-through. Yeah, and there's something that always to aspire to. Yeah.
So there are a bunch of key terms and lists that we want to work through. So just to recapitulate a bit, we are going to talk about Sila, which is, again, one of the aspects of the Eightfold Path. There are 3 entries in the Eightfold Path that have to do with ethics. Mm-hmm. We'll go through those, and then we'll talk about the 5 precepts, and then I also want to talk about something else here in Ottoba. So I don't know if we'll get to all this. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, let's see what I know. Shoot.
So in the Eightfold Path, and hopefully listeners are with me, the Dharma gets very nerdy. In the Eightfold Path, all of the aspects of the Eightfold Path they either use the word right or wise. So like right speech or wise speech, right action.
And we can leave the right out or the wise.
Right.
We'll just say the word.
Okay. So speech, action, livelihood. Those are the 3 aspects of Sila within the Eightfold Path.
Correct.
So let's talk about speech.
Yeah, let's talk about speech. So speech mostly, is it true? Right? Is it true? Again, like what's true? Like, what's true to you? What's true to me? We often say it's the capital T true versus the small t true. Like, true for me is I love chocolate or whatever. That's really true for me. But the capital T truths that we're talking about, is it true? Is it a lie? To the best of your knowledge, are you telling the truth, right? And how much we spread untruths because we heard it and believed it, that's a whole other thing. But is it true to the best of our knowledge, what we're sharing? Is it gossip or slander? Like when is our speech tearing somebody else down, or are we using it to put somebody else down or heighten ourselves up? Is it timely is one of my favorite ones. Because when we're using speech, it's kind of like, how useful is it? How needed is it? So is it timely? It's like, I know that when my husband walks in the door and he's had a day filled with his writing and his head is not in the space to want to hear me talk about the contractor, it's not the right time, or if... one of my favorite things is like read the room, right? Like wise speech is sort of like read the room. If know who you're talking to, know if they're ready to listen, know if it's the right time to listen. If somebody's really suffering, might not be the right time to share, a really big, exciting thing that's in my life. It might not be sensitive. Not that what I want to share isn't true, but it might not be the right time. There's also, is it kind? And this is one that, again, is it kind? Someone could say, well, it's true and it's timely, but is it kind? Just because it's true does not mean it's kind, or just because it's kind does not mean it's true. So we're not talking about nice. We're talking about kind in that way, like, is it helpful? Is this going to help the other person to hear it? Is it useful? right? So is it useful? That's a big one. And they all kind of wrap around each other in many ways. So does this person really need to hear this or want to hear this, or how will it be held or taken? It's a pretty good list. I've added things to it over the years. Like there's a 6-second rule that I've added to the to the
like
speech.
A 6-second delay.
6-second delay, right? So when you're talking to somebody, or when you're listening, so I add listening into speech, by the way. So listening is a really important part of speech. So when somebody else is talking, waiting 6 seconds before I respond. Because apparently, there's been many studies that when a person is processing their own speech, they might not be done yet. And so sometimes at the very end is when the goodies come out. So there's this way that even with your own speech, taking time with it, processing as you're speaking, which again comes back to that mindfulness piece, the samadhi. How connected are we to our body before things come out of our mouth? So this speech is really, it's a whole process, right? Our mind is involved, our body's involved, there's a process involved. And knowing that what comes out of our mouth is going to have an impact. Someone is then going to hear it, and there's a feedback loop. So the speaking and the listening is a constant feedback loop. There are people that speak at, and we've all been on the receiving end of that. So you can kind of tell they're not really there. They don't even care that you're there. They just want to talk. It might be out of nervousness. It might be out of whatever, just a need to, idle chatter. That was the other one. That's the other one. So those are those moments, when you're with somebody who just doesn't know how to not talk. Every second of space has to be filled up. And, there's compassion for that. It's usually out of nervousness or something. But
there is a word for that.
Oh, what is it?
Sampapalapa.
Sampapalapa. I've heard you say that word before. I've also heard, yeah, it's a good word.
Joseph Goldstein taught me this word.
Okay, yeah, it's good.
Joseph Goldstein, the great meditation teacher, Sampapalapa is like the airtime filling move that many of us make. And his point is very similar to yours, which is when you notice yourself doing that, it's a good wake-up call. All right, check it out. Why am I doing this? And often he says if you dig, you'll see the impulse is, here I am, look at me.
Right, here I am, look at me. Yeah. And then there's the opposite, again, that this feedback loop is I kind of grew up in a family that was like, we don't want to hear a thing you have to say. So I used to just I was an abbreviator of everything. I was like, okay, you got to get it out really fast and then stop, because nobody really wants to hear what you have to say, right? And so I actually had to learn, because there's a generosity of our speech and listening also. I had to learn how to talk from a place that wasn't rushed or assumed that somebody didn't want to hear. That was interesting for me to learn as a Dharma teacher, to learn how to actually give a whole talk versus a 5-minute talk. Because, so there's so much of our conditioning in our speech, how it was in our families. Like in my family also, it's like if my dad was really quiet, someone was in trouble, right? And just all of these things, speech has so much in it. I mean, of course, it's our words and the importance of our words and the impact of our words. And there's so much beauty there, and there's so much harm there. And, words now in social media and in, just how we can destroy a person in a few words, and how we can, create so much beauty in a few words. So it's a big responsibility. Our speech is a big responsibility, far beyond the lips moving and
Just to say to the listener, right speech in and of itself is a vast discipline. And I will drop in the show notes some links to episodes we've done on this. But in the spirit of wanting to get a panoramic sense of what Buddhist ethics is all about, I'll keep moving if that's cool.
Awesome.
So just again, because all the lists can be confusing, we are focusing right now on the ethical aspect of the Eightfold Path, which has 3 parts to it. The first is speech. The second part is action. What does that mean, action?
Right. So action is actually where the 5 precepts live. So again, another list. It's all about that. So that is where the 5 precepts live. So action merely is how we show up, right? How we show up in the world through the 5 precepts. Not killing, and then speech again, right? Because so many of these lists end up circling in on each other. Not killing, not stealing, so not taking what isn't freely given, how we are with our speech, how we are with our sexuality, and then how we are with intoxicants or mind-altering substances. So those are the 5. Killing, stealing, speech, sexuality, and intoxicants.
So let's go within this.
Yeah.
We're now in a list within a list within a list.
Sorry. I wish I had a dry erase board. And, I like the visual of that.
Me too.
It's helpful.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right, but I think as long as
that's fine.
As long
Yeah.
as we're
got
clear
some
with the
nuggets.
listener, they're
Yeah.
cool. Okay, so let's walk through the 5 precepts. The first one is not killing.
Yeah.
This is common to pretty much every faith. But what does it mean? Because you can go really deep on and creative on this concept of killing. So hold
Big time.
forth, if you will.
So I talked a little bit about this idea of veganism, right? So one would certainly be not taking the life of another human would be a great place to start. And again, so I'm going to go back to a path factor list of intention. Intention holds a lot of space in the precepts. So what is our intention versus what is the impact?
What's a path factor?
Oh, the Eightfold Path.
Okay.
So the first is in the wisdom aspect, there's view and intention. Sorry, yo.
You're good.
I mean, it all makes so much sense is the thing. And it's just so, yeah. So our intention, let's just think about intention as I walk through these 5, right? So there's that old metaphor of the surgeon who has the knife, right? So a knife in the abdomen, in the hands of a killer, is one thing. A knife in the abdomen of the hands of a surgeon is another, right? So it's sort of like, what is the intention here? So just knife in abdomen doesn't have to be a bad thing. It depends on what the intention is and who's holding that knife. So we could walk through each of the precepts in that way. So this idea of not killing, as anybody that drives a car, walks down the street, bugs, insects are killed all the time. And, you'll see in the Jain tradition, they'll actually walk down the street with a broom, and apparently it's to move the bugs out of the way. Okay, so and when you go on retreats, we'll see there's bug catchers, right? And people will be deep in their samadhi, deep in their meditation practice, and they'll lift and move and shift every bug that they see. And it feels good, right? Like there's this wholesomeness to it. It's the other part of this is like, we're not going to kill, but we're also going to protect life, right? So we're going to take care of life. We're going to make sure that life can thrive. And again, if we look at this culturally and societally, I mean, we live in a culture of factory farming, and where there's a dissonance is most people, I would say, if they really knew or if they had to see where their meat was coming from, and I know there's a lot of people that do exposés and show this, we probably wouldn't be in as much of the meat industry as we are. And so there's this way that we can really disconnect just as humans living in a capitalistic society that this is how we move. And so when we sensitize ourselves because we're in the practice with it, because we've taken it on as a practice, as a way of being in the world, I shared this on when I talked to you before, when I really first took this on, I was living in a house that had rodents, and I didn't want to trap them. I didn't want to kill them. I didn't want to poison them. So I got cats, right? So that was my sort of first precept, creative way of dealing with the rodents in my house was cats. And it worked. It was great. It worked. Now, they were still being killed. It just wasn't by me. Mm-hmm. It was like, it felt more like the cycle of life, right? There's the mosquitoes, there's the flies, there's the moths in your rice that you end up wasting the food, right? So I talked to many monastics about, what do I do with the moths? Do I kill the moths? Or do I throw out the food? And then I feel bad because there are starving people, right? And so we're constantly grappling with this state of what's living and what is harm. And again, that's for us. That's for you. This ehipassiko, like you said, see for yourself. How does it sit with you? How does it rest with you?
I chose Function because it's the only health platform that gives me data most people never get and the insights to start doing something about it. Inside Function, you get access to test over 100 biomarkers, from hormones to toxins to markers of heart health, inflammation, and stress. One of the big things we talk about on this show is burnout. And it's not just feeling overwhelmed by long hours or a busy calendar, it's biology. Chronic stress adds up, affecting your body beyond just feeling drained. It could also increase systemic inflammation and raise the risk of a variety of conditions such as gastrointestinal dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, autoimmune disorders, and neurodegenerative diseases. Real change starts when you realize how much stress is doing to your body. Biomarkers that give insight into how much stress might be showing up include cortisol, which is the stress hormone, DHEA sulfate, which is a key hormone produced primarily by the adrenal glands and tied to resilience. Most routine physicals skip these markers, and that's why burnout can feel mysterious when it's actually measurable. With Function, you can see what stress is really doing inside and take some steps to restore balance, energy, and clarity. Burnout does not have to be the end of the story. With data, management is possible. I have used Function, worth checking out. Learn more and join using my link. Function is a near 360-degree view to see what's happening in your body. And my first 1,000 listeners get a $100 credit toward their membership. Visit functionhealth.com/happier or use the gift code HAPPIER100 at sign up to own your health.
Few things feel better than knowing someone's looking out for you. That is the spirit behind the AT&T Guarantee. Staying connected matters. That's why AT&T has connectivity you can depend on, or they will proactively make it right. That's the AT&T Guarantee, because connection should be dependable, especially in the moments that matter most. Terms and conditions apply. Visit att.com/guarantee for details. AT&T, connecting changes everything. So first precept, list within a list within a list. We're now on the precepts.
Yeah.
The first precept is not killing.
Yeah.
The next is not stealing. There's the obvious interpretation, but where, how far can we take that?
It's often worded as not taking what isn't freely given, right? So anything that someone didn't say to you you could have, you shouldn't take. That can go really far, right? Do you pick the fruit off the tree? Probably not if you're reaching over somebody's wall to take it. When I went to Japan, it was so beautiful. Like, I literally could leave something, as I did. I left something for an hour because I forgot it. And I ran back and it was still there. And it was a valuable thing, right? And I was like, oh, wow, there's a really strong sila here. And I knew that about that place. That's actually why I went at that time, because my kids were little. And it was either another place that I won't name or Japan. And I decided Japan because I was taking them by myself, because I knew the sila was so strong there. And I don't know if that's because it is just culturally embedded. I don't know if it's because you get your hand cut off because you take it, or what the thing is. Like, I don't know what the reason is behind it. But knowing that you're in a place that your stuff is safe feels really good.
Yeah.
It feels really good. And that is one of the big parts of the precepts, is you are helping others feel safe around you. Others know that they are safe around you. So if I saw a phone sitting somewhere, my tendency would be to pick it up and really make sure it got back to the person that it belonged to. That would feel really good to me. And I would go against all odds to try to make that happen, right? And again, so there's that reciprocity. Like, I feel good. This is that thing we were talking about. This
There's
is
self-interest
that
here.
feedback loop. This is a self-interest, right? Yeah. Now it can go a lot of ways now, in terms of a lot of climate activists are using this as like, how are we constantly depleting the earth? We're taking something that isn't ours to take because we are the dominant species, and just because we can, and because we want it, and because we feel like we need it, right? So it can go that far, and then it could go something as simple as, I really don't like it when my daughter borrows my T-shirts all the time, and I can't find them when I want to wear them, right? So she's taking from me, and she did not ask me if she could take it. Now, it's funny until I want to wear that T-shirt. But, so there's, again, this is something that you could really immerse yourself in. Some people will say taking somebody else's time right? So that's one that has become a thing. Or taking, when I was when I was a starving student and I worked for, I will not say who the network was, but I was a page at a network and I really needed toilet paper. And I thought it was perfectly fine to take toilet paper from the bathroom, right? I still think it's fine. But not a lot of offices get completely depleted because people take all this stuff, So again, for us to really pay attention to, obviously, don't take someone's car, don't take someone's, stealing is stealing. But how that differs for us and how we hold it might look really different. Yeah, some people feel like they're really sticking it to the man when they take something, right? And they feel like it's justified because they feel like there is an equity. So it's an again, I could go way too far with a lot of these, but I think it's good for people to think of for themselves. Yeah.
I've heard a link made between speech and not taking what isn't freely offered. Like if you are interrupting somebody, which unfortunately I've done a couple times in this conversation with you, if you are taking all the attention in a conversation or in a social setting, that could be a second precept issue to explore.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. I think when people actually decide to do it for themselves and not because they think it's a mandate or because they think they have to or because someone told them to or maybe because they don't really understanding it, they're just thinking at it from a conceptual level instead of really immersing in the precept. And I mean, some of the most interesting things get discovered, right? And that can be one of them. It might be like, wow, I really notice myself doing that often. Yeah. Something to always explore.
Third precept is speech again.
Back to speech. Yep. Back to speech. So it holds a lot of places. So yeah, those things I already mentioned, like, is it true? Is it idle chatter? Is it gossip and slander? I mean, Joseph has a great story about gossip and slander. I'm sure you've heard him say it. And I might get the percentages wrong, but he said that he at one point, early on decided to take that one on fully and realized it took about 90% of his speech away. And that he found he didn't really have much to talk about anymore if he wasn't talking about somebody else with somebody else. And I think that could be true. I took that one on for a while too. And my friends are like, who are you? Where did you go? But it felt good. It felt really good. And again, what's beneath it? Like, what's the need? Why do I actually need to share that information about somebody else? Or what is it doing for me? I work at USC, I teach at USC, and working with college kids around this one is really good. It's really fun. Like, we explore it in a really fun way. And again, like, to be liked, often we'll stretch the truth to be more interesting, to, have a better life. A lot of them talked about how they just wanted to make more friends and they felt that they weren't enough, right? And so speech, again, as I already shared, is powerful.
Fourth is sexuality. And so that's not causing harm through our sexuality. And this one I taught a whole course on too, because it was so filled with so much for people. Because again, there's a lot of spaciousness in it. There's in one of the precepts for the monastics. So the monastics have a lot more precepts. The nuns have a certain amount and the monks have a certain amount. It's in the 200s to 300s for them. But one of them was to not have sex with a melon, right? Or really?
I mean, what's often said is the Buddha made these precepts because they happened and then he made the precept, right? So for the monastics, so it was animals, right? So the big ones are don't have sex with animals, don't have sex with minors, which minors for us here in this country, right, is 18. Again, this is a societal number that was put on something. But back then, children got married at 10, 11, 12 years old, 2,600 years ago, right? So it was really supposed to be who is under the care of their parents. Seduction was one of them, like not to seduce. Whereas now we're like, well, seduction's kind of nice. Like, there's a part of it, but they meant in that way that you were talking somebody out of what they would want to do for themselves, right? Obviously against anyone's will. So there's nothing saying anything, in Buddhism around genders or it's really consensual sex, like consensual sex. You're not meant to break up a marriage, so. But beyond that, it's kind of like game's on, right? There's nothing, I was talking to, a bunch of young people in Hollywood. So, there was a lot of people were suffering around, well, I'm into kink, or I'm into these kind of other things. Am I breaking a precept? And again, it's for everyone to explore for themselves. But it was like, from what I read as far back as I could, and Bhikkhu Bodhi actually wrote a lot about communities, and so he brought the precepts into that, and he explored like what the suttas might have said. But there's a lot of permission, but how much do you trust yourself was the thing, right? Like I was not trustworthy in that area at all. And I caused myself and others a lot of harm around my sexuality. So that was something I really had to took years to learn and learn, and didn't want to suffer anymore, right? So I think it's an important one. It's an important one for a lot of people will be like, well, I'm married, so I can't cause harm through my sexuality. But, a lot of harm, can be done even within, we'll all call it a marriage, but there's lots of different ways of being in partnership. But the idea of if somebody is withholding their sex, because they're mad at a partner. And so it's like, don't touch me, which is a punishment. There's ways of overwhelming somebody who might not be interested in having sex, right? Even if you're in a partnership. So we can cause harm so it's not only about single people, it's not only about breaking your marriage and going out of your marriage, but it can also be like, again, I'm using the word marriage, meaning whatever you called your partnership, and it might be multiple partners, right? But there are ways that we can still cause harm even within certain agreements. So really that consent is a big piece of what I've read that precept specifically talks about. Is it two consenting adults?
No melons.
Not a goat, not a melon. And I don't,
Actually, melons are okay for us if we're not monks or nuns.
Right? Yeah, that's in the Vinaya. That's for the monks and nuns. Yes, melons are okay, right. Or whatever.
It's
yeah,
good to know.
It's good to know. See, permission. Like there's so much permission, and then, but do you feel good about it? That's what it's going to come down to.
I don't know how I feel about
Don't tell your grocer.
Exactly.
Before or after, keep it to yourself. But yeah, so again, a lot of space there and a lot of harm can be caused there. So the fifth one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've gone through 4 of the precepts.
Yep.
Let's do the 5th, which is not using intoxicants to the point of heedlessness. Is that the right verbiage?
Yeah. So there are some fundamentalist Buddhists, right, or that really feel like the word heedlessness was never there, that it was just no intoxicants, period. There is a sutta that talks about not even so much as on the tip of a blade of grass, right? So pretty much nothing. Some interpret it that way. Again, these are very old suttas that were oral traditions, right, passed down. So the interpreter is going to, and how that is relayed. And then some add onto it that lead to heedlessness. So that would be like, at what point do you become heedless after using an intoxicant?
I know many Dharma teachers who drink wine.
Oh, as do I. And so this is, well, the question is, are all Dharma teachers ethical? It's questionable. It's all up to interpretation. But, right. And so, again, this is for somebody to know for themselves, right? Like I know plenty of people who are addicts, and I worked a lot in that community, who one glass of wine is never going to be okay. Mm-hmm. So that for them, the precept of nothing is what's going to cause the least amount of harm, right? So I don't want to give permission to anybody to say, oh, well, some Buddhists do or Dharma teachers do, right? It might not be okay for that person. And for someone else, that tight, hard limitation feels different than what these precepts are meant to represent, right? Which is, again, see for yourself. So the use of plant medicines have become a very popular thing. Like ketamine therapies and psilocybin therapies, and like all of these things have really been groundbreaking and so helpful to a lot of people for all kinds of things. And so to put a limitation on and say absolutely no intoxicants, now whether that's considered an intoxicant or a medicine, right? But to some, it's like hard line. No, nothing that is not natural to our bodies.
Well, would those people not use anesthesia?
Oh, no, I'm sure they would use anesthesia.
Right. So the same thing. I mean, propofol is an intoxicant. It's the only reason why I will agree to a colonoscopy.
Right.
Because of the propofol.
Right.
Not only because I don't feel it while it's happening, but because I enjoy it when I wake up.
It's your one moment.
Sidebar. I think I might have told you this story before, but I was waking up once for my first colonoscopy, and I heard myself say, "These drugs are amazing," and the nurse didn't even turn around and just said, "Third time you're telling me."
Third, that's hysterical. You're like, do I really have to wait 7 years for my next colonoscopy?
Exactly. I think I feel a polyp, doctor.
Yeah, can we check? That's awesome. Yeah. So again, that's why I'm saying, obviously, and then there's religions that are like absolutely no, not even an antibiotic, not even no surgery, right? I know that's besides the point. That's not what we're talking about in the precepts, but these are to be held in a way. So heedlessness, like let's say the word heedlessness is there. And, the thing is like, well, heedlessness would be breaking all 4 of the other precepts, right? Like telling somebody off, killing them, and, having sex with them while you're doing it or whatever. The point of this is, do you have clarity of mind? Are you mindful? Is your samadhi present? Is your mindfulness present? Is your intention present? Like, can you still be on the path? Right? Can you still know your path? Because the path, as is often called, is the prescription, right? It's the prescription for liberation, to be free from suffering. And so if that heedlessness causes you to suffer or do something like get in a car accident and hurt somebody or, something like that, or even maybe saying something you wish you hadn't said because you're just feeling a little more free from that glass of wine or that 5th glass of wine, then it's kind of, you're going back, you're spiraling back into, damn it, I fucked around and I found out, right? So do I need to do that anymore? It's just a question for yourself. I mean, I am highly committed to getting really drunk twice a year.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like for a few days. I'm committed to it.
For a few days?
For a few days. And then I don't touch alcohol again in between. I found this to be a pattern of mine. It's very interesting. It's very conscious. It's like, and I do it when I don't have any work coming. Like I have this space. I think it's a release for me of some kind. I'm working on it. I'm looking at it. But it's like something I'm like, oh, this is really interesting.
It's a bender. A couple times
It's
a year.
a bender.
In Russian.
And then I never go, and then I don't go near it. In Russian, what?
In Russian, there is a word for bender, for like a specific.
Really?
It's like a 3-day bender, and there's a word for it.
Oh my God, I need to know.
So you're saying, because actually I have a similar policy.
Okay.
I don't drink,
Okay.
not because I have a beef with, or an ethical problem with alcohol, because I have like an allergy to it. If I have a sip, I feel horrible.
Same.
So what do you do in 3 days?
I override it. It's the weird. I'm telling you, I feel terrible. I get sick. The whole thing. It's awful.
I don't like it enough to override it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
And my parent, I've got some stuff in my family, so like so alcohol has never had a huge pull for me, at least not in most of my adult life. Yeah. When I retired from ABC News, I started doing MDMA once in a while, or ecstasy once in a while, and I actually really feel I could. When you were talking about, are you still on the path?
Yeah.
For me, and this is still something I'm exploring, and I may change my mind on this later. MDMA feels foursquare on the path. It's about love. And so I'm with my friends and we're having deep conversations and lots of hugs and all that stuff. And we do that without the MDMA too. Right. It's really fun with the MDMA. And so that's, and I can't really the last time I did it was like 6 months ago, and I woke up the next morning or the next evening I remember I got home at 7. My wife was waking up and she was like, go look in the mirror. And I looked in the mirror. My pupils were so fucking dilated. And so I woke up that evening and I was like, all right, I'm not doing that again for a while, just because I felt like
for another
garbage.
6 months. Yeah.
But I didn't have remorse.
Right.
I just felt, I'm not ready to do that again.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Fair enough. And I think that's interesting also, because you said, and we do that without it, right? Yeah. And so I'm more reflecting on my own, because I actually don't have a good time when I'm doing that. Like I pretty much go in my room. Like my family, is like
when you're drinking.
Yeah. No, it's a bizarre thing. We probably shouldn't share this with anybody, but that my family. Yeah, I don't talk. I don't really I'm fun for like a day, and then I go to bed and watch movies all day. I feel like it's a kind of checkout. Like I've had it.
Vacation. It's a vacation.
It's a vacation. It's a vacation. For,
makes sense.
No responsibility. I'm not driving anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not talking to anybody. Anyway, but it's by no means am I in my life. Right. I'm checked out from my life for sure, and so that would be heedless. Right. I'm very aware I'm doing it. If there's a mindfulness thread going through it, there's an awareness that I'm doing it. I'm making the choice. Again, this will go to Hiryanotapa, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. So I think it's tapering off. It's going to go away. But it's an interesting reflection, And again, I don't judge myself for it so much. I shouldn't even say so much. I don't, but I also don't need it. That's obviously not good for my body. So this idea of intoxicants, and again, why I think it's a fifth precept is so that we're not breaking the other ones. Now, if I was doing that and went and got in my car, or tried to engage with anyone and was super unkind, then I might feel really differently about it. I don't go to bars, or I don't really do that kind of thing anymore. But when we go and we're not intoxicated, we can really kind of see. We see it in other people. I don't actually like being around people when they're intoxicated. It's not fun. It's not interesting. It's not even funny. It's not enjoyable. And so but they think they're hysterical, right? They think they're having a really good time. So it's just an interesting perspective. It really does take us out of, and with my kids, when they were teenagers and there was that social anxiety and, going that way of being. And I kind of remember when I really moved out of using drugs or alcohol as a social buffer, because I think people do use it as a social buffer a lot, was, again, being so aware, and not overly aware, but about how much I liked myself now. I like myself, but that was through practice, right? Through practice, who am I? Again, finding the truth of who we are and an understanding. It was sort of well, if people don't like me, then that's okay, right? It's not because I was trying so hard, but I'm drunk and I'm trying so hard, right? So it feels really different. So, and I can't speak for anybody else why, the fifth precept for them, but, again, it would be asking that underlying question, why? What's the why? How is it helping me? Is it helping me connect? Because really the precepts are relational elements of the path. Oh, I should say that too, just about Sila in general. This is the relational part of the path, because the samadhi is really our own personal internal aspect. And then the Sila is really our relational part. So is this connecting me with others? Is this helping me understand myself and other people and relationship better? Or is this putting me deeper into, some harmful habits and conditioning?
When you talked about the relational aspect, it got me thinking about the fact that Sharon Salzberg, another great meditation teacher, often talks about the fact that the point of meditation is not to get awesome at meditation.
Right.
It is to be better at your life.
Right.
And so this, in some ways, can be seen as like a really important extension of the practice, you know?
It is. And that's why it's the path. Like this thing that we keep pounding, this 8 thing, you know, this path, it is a number, but it doesn't, you know, oftentimes people will describe it as the 3 strands of the braid, the Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. You can't make a braid with just 2 pieces of hair. You need 3. I'm sure there's other ways that people explain it, but they all need each other to live off of. So yes, our understanding of what our meditation practice is, I mean, it naturally in us arises this wellness, this well-being, this stillness, this silence, this clarity, right, is what naturally comes out of our practice. And from that is the natural. Can I move into hearing now?
Yeah, well, wait, before you do that. Before you do that,
yeah.
Let's finish. Finish.
Okay.
Just to reset again. Sorry to be neurotic about this, but
great.
So we've been dwelling in a list within a list within a list. So there's the Eightfold Path. Just to reset at the top, which is the sort of 8 parts of the recipe for getting enlightened. Within the Eightfold Path are these 3 aspects of wisdom, meditation, and ethics. And we've been looking at the 3 aspects of ethics within this bucket of the Eightfold Path.
Right.
And within one of the aspects of ethics in the Eightfold Path, there's a list within a list within a list, which is the 5 precepts.
Correct.
So we've now we've come out of that list within a list within a list.
Yeah.
And we're going back to the Eightfold
Livelihood.
Path. So we've talked about right speech, right action. Again, right action or wise action is where the 5 precepts live. So let's do livelihood.
Okay. Don't know much about this. Well, I mean, what I do know is there are, from the perspective of the Buddhist teaching, anything where you deal in meat, like harming animals, arms, so firearms, alcohol, like all the things that would have you breaking these precepts, right? So dealing in gambling or making money, making your livelihood off of extrapolating or harming somebody else. Then what would wise livelihood or right livelihood or wholesome livelihood be? Well, what we do,
Yeah.
right? Spreading the Dharma, talking about like how people can live better, reflection, contemplation. You know, there's so many beautiful ways of making money. And even some of those, you know, I have a lot of friends who are, let's go back to that first precept for a second. One of their livelihoods is being sustainable farmers, right? So they're raising animals, and actually, this is where we buy from. You know, we buy from these family farms that are raising their animals free range and are eating off of the hills and the valleys of California. And I have not been in the kill room, but are humanely killing the animals, for lack of a better word. So there are, I'm sure, livelihoods now that maybe would have been seen as one way and aren't now. I mean, some people are even considering hunting in the way that hunting's being done these days as truly ethical practices and using the whole animal. And, you know, so I respect that. So in terms of livelihood, again, seeing for yourself, but, you know, I don't even like saying some of the things, right? Because it's like being a bar owner, having a liquor store. And some of those people are quite lovely people and their family businesses. And, you know, there are people that are making amazing wines and have these vineyards. I actually had a student who ran a vineyard, and he was coming to me because he was in distress. Like, kept really grappling with, is this wise livelihood? And so like we spent months together working on this, right? Because I wasn't going to give him an answer. It's not my place to say anything, but he really worked through it.
I just went back out to the beach. I took a fall trip with my wife to the beach in Montauk, New York, which is our favorite place in the world. We were out there for a wedding, and we stayed at our friend's house. And I was just reminded of how much I love staying in a house on vacation. There's something just magical about staying in a house. You feel like you're part of the scene, not just a tourist. So yeah, I love staying in welcoming homes that I can book on Airbnb. But while I was in the home out in Montauk, it got me thinking that our home
could be the same thing for somebody else. We put so much time into making this place beautiful and comfortable. So why not help somebody else feel comfortable and taken care of while they're traveling when we're away from home? This is an option you yourself might want to consider. If you host your home on Airbnb while you're traveling, it's a great way to offset some of the costs of your own trip. And that extra income can be put toward an upcoming trip, a splurge you've been eyeing, home improvements, etc. And if you've got a lot of trips ahead of you, hosting on Airbnb is a pretty cool and unique way to make some money back. Your home may be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host. You know those moments when someone just takes care of something for you? That's what AT&T is doing with the AT&T Guarantee. Staying connected matters. That's why AT&T has connectivity you can depend on, or they will proactively make it right. That's the AT&T Guarantee. Because staying connected isn't optional, it's essential. And AT&T wants you to feel that somebody's got your back. Terms and conditions apply. Visit att.com/guarantee for details. AT&T, connecting changes everything. I think one way to look at this is this list comes from the Bronze Age, I think, 2,600 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the Buddhists always had this caveat of ehipassiko, come see for yourself. So there's this list, but I don't know that every bar owner listening to this needs to rethink their life. It's like, all right, let's figure out how we relate to this.
Yeah.
How does it feel for us?
How does it feel for us? I mean, if you keep pouring a 14-year-old into a cab at the end of your shift, it might not be the most, wholesome way of spending your day. Like, again, how does it feel? Yeah, like you said, how does it feel truly? People need to make money, and some people are supporting families. And but one of the beautiful things about the path, again, thinking long, thinking far, thinking wide, is there a possibility to work towards something different? And so many people I know that are working through. One of my students was a dancer in a club, and she was really trying to work through, was this the right way for her? And we spent about a good 5 years working through it, and working on it. And it was a long-term practice. And it was beautiful, And again, it was for her to work through. I was there to support her. And no one was calling it wrong or bad or something she shouldn't do. It was something that was helpful and necessary at the time. So, yeah. You have a tattoo.
Yeah, I have a tattoo.
Wow.
Yeah. Inspired by, are you friends with Spring Washam?
Yeah. Who she was supposed to be on the call this morning, too.
Oh, she was?
But
okay.
Yeah.
Just for context, tell us about the call that you're referencing.
There's a call that a few Black female teachers have, sometimes rarely, sometimes more often. And there are a few teachers that are on this call. And Spring was meant to be on the call, but couldn't make it this morning.
She and I, not far from here, like about an hour or two south of here, did a one-on-one loving kindness meditation retreat many years ago.
Yeah.
And she was joking during it that she wanted me to get the words "for the benefit of all beings" tattooed on my chest. So I got an acronym of FTBOAB on my wrist. Amazing. Which actually is much more useful than a chest tattoo because I see it all the time. And it's just a reminder. It's a mindfulness bell.
I love it. Yeah, I have upeka on my arm, which is a similar thing.
Upeka, not to be confused with Woody Woodpecker, is the Buddhist term for equanimity.
Yeah. Yeah, it says, I am the heir to my own karma. My happiness or unhappiness are dependent upon my actions, not upon my wishes. So this is sila, right? And that's a big reason why I got it. My actions, not upon my wishes. Gotta show up. Make mistakes. Fall. Show up.
Would it be fair to say that making mistakes, that is a part of the path?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's part of being human, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's part of, from the time that we learn to crawl, from the time we learn to walk, if we call falling down when a baby's learning to walk a mistake, then it's not a mistake, right? It's just part of learning. It's part of growing. It's part of strengthening. It's part of doing something new and different. So sometimes, if we've been living a certain way and that's all we know, we're conditioned in that way of living, then it's not necessarily a mistake. It's just we're growing out of one way of being into another. And then it's interesting because once we start to know, it's that sort of thing, There's a fable, a story I love to read. It's called Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. And it's, you're walking down a street, you fall into a hole, you're in the hole, you don't know where you are, you can't get out, it's not my fault, right? And then you're, chapter 2, you're walking down the street, fall into the hole, it's not my fault, but you get out. 3rd chapter, walking down the street, fall into the hole again, how did I get here? You get out. 4th chapter, walking down the street, fall into the hole. It is my fault. You get right out. 5th chapter, you walk around the hole, right? So it's that way, like, it takes a while. So is that a mistake at first when you don't know, you're unaware, it's not your fault, you don't even know how you got there. But then slowly, over time, we learn. There's even a 6th chapter where you walk down a different street, right? So yeah, it's sort of the beauty, again, of that longer path where nobody's hopefully beating us up for it. Nobody's shaming us for it. Nobody's telling us we're a bad person for it. But we learned through that repeated intention of wanting to grow. Like that North Star is there. We have these guidelines, we have these paths, we have these lists, and they're very helpful. And it's a lot, like a lot of these lists at first can feel, some people say it's like driving a car for the first time, right? Where there's like the gear shift and the rearview mirror and there's other people and there's the steering wheel and there's this and there's that and but then after a while you get in a car and you're just driving it, right? It's smooth, you got it. Accidents will happen. We'll be taken by surprise, but it becomes more smooth. And that's kind of how these path factors and these precepts all start to work together, in this body of awareness. And we oftentimes recognize things quicker, like our response time doesn't take so long. And then again, that's where like maybe being intoxicated, our response time might take a little bit longer. So, like I know that, right? Or for me, like with the speech part, right now in certain political situations, I really have to pay better attention than I would at other times. Right? When I know I'm going to be with certain people or in certain situations, my tendency might be to want to really educate. Yeah. I'll put it in those terms. And, it might not always be useful or timely or helpful. Or wise or kind. And so that's where all of these really, so then I need to have mindfulness of my body and awareness, right? And so this is being in that car, like we're all in that car together. You're going to annoy me. That car's going to be over there. But can I just keep driving? There's the direction I'm going. And so how much can we hold? How much can we hold at once?
This actually kind of brings us nicely to Hiri and Otapa.
Okay.
So the conventional wisdom in psychological circles is that shame is unhealthy.
Yeah, right.
In Buddhism, there's this pair of concepts, and by the way, now we've kind of left the list area. There's this pair of concepts, Hiri, Hiri, and Otapa, Ottappa, I think.
Yep.
Which are sometimes referred to as moral shame and moral dread. And these are healthy things. So how do we understand this as a kind of healthy version of shame? These as a kind of healthy version of shame?
And these are such bad translations, truly. And again, I feel like these are translations that were, kind of like every version of the Bible goes through the diaspora of the time and who's writing it, right? And I'm not quite sure who put those translations on it. But so can I kind of frame it how,
please,
in my experience and how some of the teachers that like Ajahn Suchito or Carol Wilson like might frame it that has really made it helpful for me to understand is, we're born into these bodies that has this natural desire, maybe even if we had a good enough parent we learn to empathize and come into sync with a primary caregiver or givers or tribe. And our nature is to want to please, right? To want to get a positive response, to want to have a nice, pleasant feedback where there isn't punishment involved or an ouch involved, right? So this is a really great way that I like to think of Hiri. It's that natural way of wanting to show up with grace and care, and it is a mental state, a mental way of being. It's often called our conscience. We can read the room, like we can see what's in front of us, and the response that we hope to get is the same one that we're giving, right? If it's we don't want to be punished.
Would you say Hiri is what we're checking in on when we are fucking around and finding out?
Right. So, but it's that pre-knowing. It's that way. Like if we're just walking down the street and we're in a good mood, we just want to say hi to everybody and be, and we don't need anything bad to happen. We're just like interested in having a good day, and we want everyone else to share in that good day. It's that thing. And but it's also that experience of like that moment, maybe when you say something to someone, you're having your good day and you're like, nice hair, right? And you're seeing that they are like, what do they mean by that? And then you're kind of having that moment of like, oh shit, like, ew, that felt bad. Like, I wish I hadn't said it in that way, right? It's that instant feedback. It's that instant, and it's not, yes, they had a response, but it's that like, you wish that hadn't come out of your mouth. Something as simple as that. And so the moment when you understand that there's been an impact on the person, that's the otapa. So the Hiri is that real desire just for it all to go well. It's that understanding, just like self-respect, conscience, instinct, that inner ick is one that really works for me. I feel really good about myself, this self-respect that we're talking about, this self-awareness, when I behave and show up in the world in a certain way. So this is that idea of Hiri. So where the word shame came from around that, I think and how it's sometimes translated, is meant to be a growth point from it, is that moment of that inner ick. I knew it happened. So the point is not to beat yourself up. It's not, so guilt and shame can often be like kind of put together, right? And so, but guilt is so self-involved, right? It's really like, oh, are they going, I did something bad, and you kind of spin it on yourself and you start like, trying to dig your way out of it and apologizing, but not apologizing because you care about how they felt, but apologizing because you want them to feel good about you again, right? So guilt often comes with that, right? It's, I feel like I did something bad and I don't want them to think poorly of me. Shame, from what I understand, is far more, can be very productive. It can be a growth point. It can be something to say, I didn't like how that felt, and how can I change through that? How can I not do that again? How can I have a different understanding? How can I experience it again in my body? Like if we think of the pre-verbal child, when they are reading somebody else, there's no words coming from it, but there's a feedback loop where they're kind of going, oh, I watch it with my dogs. My dogs understand, like, oh, she didn't like that. It's out of my vocabulary, right? I don't do that behavior anymore. And that can look good and bad, right? Because some kids can just be punished. So things are punished out of them. So this is where I think it gets interesting around conditioning versus pure behavior, right? Not conditioned behavior, but that pure desire to want to be a good human and to, again, have empathy and to connect.
So let me just see if I can sum us up to this point.
And this is a lot of my interpretation, like my understanding of it.
I don't expect anything else.
Okay.
Hiri, so we're talking about Hiri and otapa, often you would argue mistranslated as moral shame and moral dread. Hiri, my understanding, based on talking to you in this conversation thus far, is this inner knowing we have is like, it doesn't feel good when I'm an asshole.
Exactly.
And otapa is kind of, so it's a moral shame in that, like, we have an inner sense of like when we've put a foot wrong.
Right.
Moral dread or otapa is kind of about a healthy sense of worrying what other people think of us.
It's an impact. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how we are in the community, how our relationships are with other people. Sometimes I've heard it described as like, would you want your Buddhist teacher to see you doing this?
It's funny. Yeah. We always talk about, would you want them to see that in your grocery cart?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I'm going to give you an example of a Hiri Ottappa moment I had. I was dropping Andre off at the airport, my husband at the airport, and this woman flipped me off. I was pulling out in my car. I've never road raged before. Let's put that first. I've never had that experience of like road rage. And so normally I'm just kind of, because I've learned from my practice, I would rather be like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'll just keep driving. Or, no one can piss me off that much. It's not really worth it. Well, this woman, I'm going to precursor it with, it was the day of the fires here in Los Angeles. So we're talking early February. Los Angeles was on fire. And I had a lot of friends who were very impacted, and we were impacted a little bit. But I was in a mood, right? So I wasn't as maybe grounded or mindful or engaged with myself as normal. I was upset. It was a really tragic day one. So I was dropping him off at the airport, and I'm pulling out. I didn't know this woman was trying to get in, and she's flipping me off and just like yelling at me. And I was like, whoa, I didn't even know you were there. So I was like, okay. And I'm shuffling to get out. And then she ends up blocking me unintentionally. So I very intentionally laid my hand on the horn for like 10, 15 seconds, like long, hard, loud, to the point where the guy who was directing traffic says to me, it's not that big of a deal, lady. Like, he's saying that to me, right? And then she and I are both like this at each other. It was so satisfying. It felt so good. So good.
Did it though?
Yeah, in that moment,
yeah.
It was everything. And I was like, why haven't I done this before? In that moment. The second I pull away, Ottappa. Right. I lost my Hiri. Hiri was gone. Awareness was gone. I was all caught in righteousness and anger and whatever else was there, indignation. It took seconds, like after, especially when the guy, like he was so calm. He was like, it's not that big of a deal, lady. It was like, ding. And I'm driving away and Ottappa hit me.
Healthy embarrassment.
And just like, really, JoAnna, like, was it really worth it? It was 3 seconds of total pleasure. And it was more like release, like all of the whatever was coming up from the fires. And that it just was like, thank you for showing up so that I could have you to like release on, But then after just that, like, oh, that was not my best me. I wanted to take it back. And that lasted. So the 3 seconds of pleasure, the Ottappa lasted 3 hours. I mean, it lasted, I'm still talking about it,
exactly.
Right? So it's still here. Like there's still a spider I killed that to this day I can see. It's when I think about like the first precept, right? Or it's funny, the stuff that'll really stick with you. So it's that moment of really understanding. I used to work in prisons and in juvenile detention facilities, and a lot of times they would talk about those 5 seconds that changed their lives, right? And where they are now. Because we like to think of people in prison as bad people, and it's like a bad moment that somebody had. That's like the true outplay of Ottappa, right? And then, but it's that I made a commitment to myself that I don't need to do that again. Right. And that feels really good. It feels good to have that knowing. I'd heard about road rage, and I know a lot of people that really like it, like they get off on it, right? It's like such a thing for some people are road ragers even, like they label themselves. I was like, yeah, I don't need that. I don't need that label. I don't need that tattoo. And so that experience, and my mouth is just unskillful at times. I think I'm really smart and clever and funny and right. And so I often will have these experiences where I will have said something to a friend, and I've gotten very good at apologies and not the I'm sorry, so that I feel better, not the guilt kind of apology, but I really understand that was unskillful. I want them to know that I know. It's not, and sometimes I'll make that call and they'll be like, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? Which is fine. It was still my Hiri. It was still my Hiri and my Ottappa. And there's other times that they'll just be like, yeah, thank you. That did feel a little odd. It gives me clarity on the moment. And then there's obviously like the tiniest of things that we do. And then there's, again, just going back to like these social consciousness of maybe you're indoctrinated into a family or a worldview where something I would see as really atrocious is part of your culture. It's part of the way that you were raised. And so it fits. And so I wonder about that. I think about that. We're born into different eras. The Buddha talks about, this is getting into a whole other thing, but just talks about when we talk about karma, right, which is action. And when we talk about action, like karma is a big part of it, intention and action. But that our karma could be very much dictated by the era that we're born, the body that we're born into, the families that we're born into. And so when I think about Hiri and Otapa in that term, is it truly like a human knowing without any conditions yet on it? And then how often do we need to get deconditioned or unlearn? So again, that's something that I just like to play with and grapple with, because we can get very righteous in ways of being or ways of thinking or ways that we think other people should be. And where does Hiri and Otapa live in that,
I think what makes them, I keep saying these is kind of a healthy version of shame and a healthy version of embarrassment.
Yeah.
And this might be a good place to kind of wrap it up. I think what makes them healthy as opposed to unhealthy is that an unhealthy shame, which is most shame, frankly, and guilt and embarrassment is there's a lot of self in it. You're telling yourself a story. I did this quote unquote bad thing. I am a bad person.
Right.
I am this kind of person because I did that thing. You're putting your head further up your ass because you're telling yourself this whole story about yourself, as opposed to the healthy part is like, in Buddhism, it's sometimes referred to as like a wise remorse. Yeah, I did this bad thing. I should make the call and apologize and demonstrate that I clearly understand and offer to make some sort of amends. But I'm not stuck in what I sometimes call like a psychic constipation, where to keep going with the scatological references here, where I nothing can happen, nothing can move because I'm stuck in this story about myself, as opposed to thinking about what the harm might have been to somebody else.
Yeah, no, that's good. Scatological. Yeah, the term that you used earlier, it's that self-involved. It's a difference between self-awareness and self-involved, right?
Yeah.
Again, it takes us out of the relational aspect if we're using sila in terms of the relational aspect, and it's just spinning us in on ourselves. And we know what that feels like sitting on the cushion. So when we've had a bad day of sila, it's a different experience to sit on the cushion. It's a different experience in our meditation if we're spending all of our time in a review of the day before, or a review and how you're a bad person and how you're being self-critical. It's really different than watching what happens, which is so beautiful when we're not constantly breaking a precept or causing harm in some ways. We actually get to see the practice as it truly is, which is how the mind works and how we can have spaciousness and how it can be such a beautiful, intimate review of what's actually happening versus, again, the conditioned response and habit response to a behavior, we don't get past that if we're constantly like apologizing or in some way in our mind just spinning out. Yeah. We don't get to grow. Yeah. Again, it's a path. It's a path. It's not a circle. It's a path.
Before I let you go,
yes,
is there something we should have talked about but didn't?
Well, I mean, forgiveness is a good thing to have on this.
Sure.
To just as a practice to when we make that mistake or break that precept, as we call it, that understanding is, again, like you had pointed out, is not to be that it's not helpful to beat ourselves up. It's not helpful to beat somebody else up. And how the forgiveness practice works is, have I caused harm to myself? Have I caused harm to somebody else? Or has somebody caused harm to me? And all these are practices to liberate our hearts from a precept that's been broken, or maybe one that's been broken that we've had the impact from. Forgiveness practice has been a really nice way for me. I could not actually let myself out of that cycle that you were talking about until I forgave myself for some of the harms that I'd caused through breaking the precepts or through not having strong sila. And it's not forgiveness in a superfluous way of like, oh, now it's better, right? It's never to say, oh, I'm forgiven, now I can do it again, or I forgive you, now you can harm me again. It's very much a way to liberate our hearts from the constant chatter of shame or remorse or guilt. That is not the healthy version, not the true Hiri-Ottappa version. And there's that could be in a link too. Like there's lots of great forgiveness practices. Jack does a great forgiveness practice. Jack Kornfield does a great forgiveness practice.
Can you just run through the practice one more time so people, if they want to do it in their own life, can do it?
So the first part is how I've caused harm to myself. And it's often phrased beautifully as knowingly or unknowingly, out of my own hurt or confusion, how I have caused harm to myself, how I have caused harm to somebody else, knowingly or unknowingly, out of my own confusion or delusion, and then how has somebody else caused me harm, which can often be the biggest one for people, especially if there's been any childhood trauma or abuse that can really take over somebody's whole life, right? And it's hard to grow past and beyond that. It can be a really big heart's release. So how somebody else may have caused harm to you, knowingly or unknowingly, out of their own confusion or delusion. So it's a not only a forgiveness practice, but a compassion practice. Yeah, it's quite beautiful. I actually couldn't do metta practice until I forgave myself. I couldn't allow myself metta for myself until I forgave myself for a lot of my earlier life harms and transgressions. Yeah. Yeah, so that all just feeds each other, right? So then that makes me want to just show up as a better human. And do I make mistakes? Yes. Do I have awareness around it? Yes. Yeah, not everybody likes me.
Who doesn't like you? Other than the woman in the car.
Hey, right. She probably really likes me now, though. We actually had a good agreement. Our fuck yous were like, we got it. We saw each other. We were looking right in each other's eyes.
For those listening who do like you and want to get more from you, where can we? Do you have a website? Where can we learn more about you, and also maybe talk a little bit about your work at Apple?
I do have a website, JoAnnaHardy.org. I'm not doing a whole lot right now, mostly because I'm just giving myself a little bit of a break. I do teach retreats occasionally. I have a group in Los Angeles if people live in Los Angeles and want to come to that group. And then I am working for Apple at Fitness Plus. It's a great app, and I do 5, 10, and 20-minute meditations. And we do things like calm and sleep and sound and focus and resilience and kindness. So there's lots of great meditations that we do, and it's really it feels like right livelihood. I feel like I'm getting to reach a lot of people who wouldn't normally go to meditation because it is a fitness app. So people are going to work out and to get fit, and then suddenly they stumble upon this meditation thing. And a lot of people it's kind of the add-on to all of their workouts, So it's a great way to integrate it into your day, even if for 5 minutes in your car. So I'm really appreciating getting to do that work. And then we'll see what's next.
I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.